There was a major malfunction during an evacuation on the Skinwalker ranch. They had a little excavator on the ranch, and Brandon, who was the owner of the ranch, had given us permission to use it in order to carry out shallow excavation whenever they discovered evidence of weird happenings. As a result, they came to the conclusion that it was best to move on to the next stage in order to find out what the findings were. Since earlier this year, when they were digging up the pit at Homestead 2, they had a peculiar experience that made them question whether or not they should continue digging. They were very cautious now as they conducted their shallow dig in search of additional scientific evidence of what could be buried in the Triangle region. This was because earlier this year, when they dug up the pit at Homestead 2, they discovered something that made them question whether or not they should continue digging. And now there had been a major malfunction during the evacuation. Then, out of nowhere, an odd occurrence occurred with the phone of one of the team members, and it appeared as though it had been broken into. It appeared as though something in the universe was pleading for our help. Or is it attempting to tell us something that we shouldn't ignore? There is a cause for everything that takes place, but there are so many happenings that no one can explain that they can't even begin to try to explain them all. While Tomas is working the ground with the mini excavator, Dragon and Caleb sift through the dirt looking for anything metallic that could explain why the earth in this location is so conductive. In addition, Eric was monitoring the spectrum analyzer, the gamma ray detector, the lightning strike meter, and they also used a metal detector to check for any extra changes in the environment while they worked to disrupt the Earth. This was done as they were working to shake things up on the planet. After that, come back to this location so that we may compare our findings and determine whether or not they are the same. They soon arrived at a point where they were incapable of comprehending what could possibly be causing the metal detector to register tremendous strikes and then absolutely nothing at all. They continued to dig deeper into the dirt, and the signal on the metal detector grew stronger and stronger as they did so. However, at that point, they had not identified any metal object at all in the plunder, which prompted me to feel that we must be getting closer and closer to a really big structure or object that is built of metal. They found that the level of the background noise they were observing was more than twice as high as the typical level. It has been discovered in all of the locations. Regarding this crater, there are a few things that may be mentioned. Then, all of a sudden, only a minute ago, it started to spiral out of control and completely out of control. Just now, a peculiar occurrence had place at this particular location. I can't tell for certain whether or not it's natural, but I can't rule it out either. They have most likely heard a vast number of tales that depict the possibility of something buried beneath the surface of the land, such as caves or a base. These tales explain the possibility of something concealed beneath the surface of the land. Who is to say that it couldn't potentially be anything even weirder than that? Who has the authority to make such a claim? They have heard wild tales of openings that lead to some type of underground base, and they have also heard stories of individuals exploring deep caves or caverns. They were conscious of the fact that they needed to approach that situation with caution, and they were aware of the fact that they needed to study that region more thoroughly. The notion that there is something concealed beneath the ground here that was either responsible for it or contributed to it is the most far-fetched of the three possibilities. Since it is not even close to being 8 feet deep, they have no choice but to continue digging more because there is no other option. They had reached the deepest point that this minuscule excavator was capable of reaching at this particular point in time. Whatever lived there did so at a depth that is currently beyond our ability to access it. We have no idea what might have been there. They were aware that the next thing that they needed to do was to conduct a more in-depth magnetometry scan of this area in order to identify what exactly is producing these energy spikes and whether or not it really could be a structure or a flooded tunnel system, as James Keenan had indicated. This was the next thing that they needed to do in order to determine what exactly is causing these energy spikes. During the second season of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, there is an episode titled Major Malfunction During an Excavation. In this episode, the crew is excavating the spot in which they had previously uncovered a curious metal object. They are using heavy equipment to dig up the area in the hopes of uncovering additional information about the object and what it could possibly be. The mission of the team is to figure out what the mystery item is. However, things quickly go from bad to worse when the excavator that was being used to dig up the area unexpectedly has a failure. The group is obligated to cut off the machine in order to investigate the issue. and they immediately find that there has been a considerable loss of hydraulic pressure. The group is concerned that the hydraulic fluid may have polluted the area, making it more difficult to accurately evaluate any evidence that may have been there in the area. They reach the decision that it would be in everyone's best interest to bring some samples of both the fluid and the soil back to the lab so that it may be analyzed there. They continue their inquiry and come to the realization that the hydraulic fluid is not the only factor contributing to the problem. This is one of the conclusions that they reach. They also find indications of the presence of a strange, dark substance in the soil, which appears to be the source of the issues with the machinery. Even though they are unable to positively identify the chemical, they have a hunch that it is an organic substance, despite the fact that they are unable to determine what it is. The team continues its research of the location despite the challenges they face, and in the end, they find further strange items. They find a number of objects that range in size, the most noteworthy of which is what appears to be a giant sphere constructed of metal that was buried in the ground. They are unable to determine the purposes of the items, therefore all they can do is theorize that the items are some kind of technological instrument. The crew wraps off the episode without having a crystal clear knowledge of what they have discovered, but they are resolute in their determination to proceed with their investigation anyway. They make a solemn swear that they will employ science and technology in order to learn the secrets of Skinwalker Ranch and to document the strange occurrences that continue to take place on the land. In addition, they record the fact that they will do so. All things considered, the second season episode, Major Malfunction During an Excavation, is a fascinating one that will leave viewers wondering about the mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch. It is commendable that the team is committed to applying scientific methodologies in their investigations of the paranormal. In addition, their zeal to explore the unknown is sure to stimulate other people. The application of ground-penetrating radar led to the discovery of this archaeological treasure. It was at first believed to be a bolt for a crossbow. However, an expert on ancient antiquities believes it may have been a javelin, which the Romans employed as a weapon more than 2,000 years ago. In the second episode of the 9th season, the team discovers a metal piece that appears to be what they have been searching for ever since the show first started. After additional examination, it is determined that only a small portion of the piece actually consists of gold. As the show follows the adventure of full-time treasure hunters, the mysteries surrounding Oak Island continue to get more perplexing with each new season. Their discoveries using metal detectors open up previously unimaginable doors for historical research, but you may achieve the same results with your own tools. When hunting for something on someone else's property or on public grounds, you should always be sure to ask for permission first. The majority of the treasure would almost certainly go to the Lagina brothers. For more thrilling up-till-date discoveries on the Skinwalker Ranch and more, be sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified on the next post. The first piece of information is that the brothers Lagina's present search of Oak Island is covered by the Treasure Trove license. This is a government act that stipulates that licensed treasure finders can lawfully keep 90% of whatever wealth they find. Marty elaborates by saying that if a substantial treasure were to be discovered on Oak Island, it is possible that several claimants would emerge and make cases for their legitimate ownership of the treasure's contents. These claimants could argue for their ownership based on some aspect connected to their domicile, their family history, or another factor. Simply put, a large number of people would attempt to get at least a fraction of the legendary riches, but it is difficult to say if any of them would be successful. At the end of the day, there are at least two parties that are certain to benefit from the treasure. The brothers Lagina and the government would each have a valid claim to ownership of at least a portion of the gold. On the other hand, only the passage of time will reveal whether or not such a situation will ever play out in The Curse of Oak Island. Research team just released shocking images. Click on the next video to find out more.